My name is Wilken Rivera, and I'm a member of the Packer team. And today I really want to just share a journey with everyone um, about Packer and a project that the team has been working on for a bit, specifically the Packer plugin repository and the Packer init command, which was released yesterday in version 1.7.0 of Packer. For those not too familiar with Packer or are hearing the name for the first time, Packer is an open source tool for creating identical machine images for multiple platforms from a single source configuration. Those images can be for your favorite cloud providers, or maybe a container, or a VM or a template for your favorite hypervisor. Or what that means, if you're saying, hey, I didn't really quite catch that, you take one configuration file, let's say it's an ACL file, and you specify what you want your AMI or your image to look like. And in there, you can define multiple provisioning steps and post processors, or well, I guess provisioning steps to apply fixes or certain configurations to these images. And then Packer will take that file, do the magic that it does in reaching out to these services, building this image, applying the patches, and then spitting out a new machine image for you. That was a super high level overview, and I think we were fortunate enough that there were 2 talks yesterday about Packer, and there's also one coming up later today about deploying CI/CD infrastructure with Terraform and Packer. For those that are new and you want to get a deeper dive into what it is, I think those are good talks to reference. So I'm here to talk about the Packer plugin repository. But before getting into that and into Packer init, I would like to take a quick look back at Packer 1.0. Back in 2017, when Packer first reached 1.0, that was a very significant milestone. Packer at that point was considered feature complete, and it was already in use by tens of thousands of organizations and practitioners worldwide. At that point, we had about 50 bundled plugins, and I promise that I'll get a little more into this whole bundling of plugins in a minute, these plugins represented the integrations to the various platforms. So these integrations, as we call them, builders, provisioners, and post-processors, are what allow Packer to build and deploy images to different platforms. And since Packer 1.0, our reach, or Packer's reach, has really grown in integration as well as capabilities, which is what brings us today, the Packer plugin repository. And excuse me, for those familiar with Terraform, you may already be thinking about the Terraform registry. And to that, I'll say the plan is to get there. Today, the repository is being backed by GitHub, which is where the majority of the Packer plugins reside, at least the ones that we know of. The repository will consist of GitHub repositories that host various Packer plugins for the many integrations and third-party tools that we've come to rely on today, right? And interacting with this repository will revolve around the work around the new Packer init command released in version 1.0, and this new concept of a multi-component plugin binary, also part of the 1.7.0 release. And I'm sort of breezing through this because I promise you I'll get into all of this later on in the deck. So the Packer plugin repository, why today? When we stop for a second and we take a look at Packer today, we can see that Packer, there's a huge interest in pushing Packer forward. Right now on the Packer GitHub repository, we're sitting at an all-time high of 1,145 contributors. We could also see that in the integrations essentially have doubled. We have 34 builders, 18 provisioners, 22 post-processors, for, up until yesterday, a total of 92 bundled plugins. Today, those numbers are still increasing. We just released 2 new data source plugin types that were also introduced in Packer 1.7.0. It's probably a good time to say, if you haven't had a chance to read the release notes or the release email for yesterday's release, I recommend you take a look after. There's a lot of good goodies in there. There are hundreds of more contributors to Packer who are joining in on the forums, building third-party plugins, and tooling around Packer. Packer, I think at this point, it's really safe to say that it has a very vibrant ecosystem and has evolved quite a bit from 1.0. And if we sort of take a minute to think about those numbers and start looking at how Packer has evolved, we get a chance to really look at the releases that have come after 1.0. And in this particular one, we're looking at 1.5.0. The 1.5.0 release is where we added the support for ACL. Prior to ACL, JSON was sort of the de facto for Packer. And it's a great piece of technology, but when you start building lots and lots of images across various cloud platforms or services, JSON can get a little wild. So ACL was a very nice sort of piece to add on to Packer, let alone the fact that ACL was already supported by most of the other HashiCorp products. We also added a nice little feature of sharing information between our components, such as builders and provisioners, which was a feature that a lot of our users were interested in. They wanted to take a lot of the raw information that was generated from our builders and share it along, to the provisioners and the post processors in a seamless way. So that was a big milestone for us. The next release that we had was 1.6.0, and 1.6.0 was really a continuation of the work that we started in 1.5.0. Right? We really wanted to continue to enhance the overall ACL experience, because what we found between 1.5.0 and all the little releases in between is that ACL was shaping out to be a really nice experience for Packer, and there was a lot of requests for new functionality. So we wanted to continue enhancing that experience and making sure that we can get to full parity with JSON, right? We wanted to make sure that the ACL2 experience was just as good, if not better, than what people were seeing with JSON. And in this 1.6.6 release, we were really happy to check off the issue, the 9176 issue, which you may be seeing on the screen already, and I promise I'll get back to, where we had checked off everything, all of the tasks that we had for implementing ACL to have parity with JSON was checked off, and we added an additional check. We introduced a new function, an environments function that came highly requested from our users, specifically for ACL, and it really helped them transition from JSON over to ACL. So in 1.6.6, we had we came to a very interesting point where we look at these two reflection points that you see on your screen here, reflection point 8610 and 9176, which happen to be GitHub issues if you're interested in looking at them and looking at the details. We really sort of took a look back at everything that was happening on the ACL side and how Packer was evolving and how JSON was evolving, what the users were requesting, and we wanted to ask ourselves, we asked ourselves, is this sustainable? Is this something that we can continue building? This being continuing the track of supporting both JSON and ACL2 and all of these large numbers of plugins that are currently being bundled into Packer. And by bundled, I mean that when we make a Packer release, we essentially take all of these plugins and we bundle them into that single binary so that they're available to the user the moment they hit Packer build. And what we realized was it's been a fun ride, but it's really difficult to continue to keep pace with the ever-changing cloud infrastructure. And while while it's been a fun ride, keeping pace is something that doesn't quite seem feasible, right? What it would mean for us is we'd have to make every incoming request on Packer priority 0 and somehow, some way learn every possible service that we integrate with, which again, doesn't seem feasible. So what we knew at that point, looking at taking these two reflection points right before 1.6.6, right? We knew that we had a very vibrant Packer community and that our practitioners have more knowledge in a lot of the infrastructures and the tools that we work with today, because they're the ones using it on a daily basis. And taking that and really looking at how the rest of the HashiCorp products have evolved, sort of focusing on Terraform at the moment, because that is the closest product to Packer at this point, we made the decision that we really wanted to break the mold for Packer going into 1.6.6 and into the future, which is 1.7.0, which is no longer the future because it got released yesterday. But we wanted to take what we have and start splitting up Packer into this Packer core and Packer plugin model, right? And essentially creating a central location where plugins can be maintained, released, and downloaded by Packer maintainers and practitioners all around the world, and continue to use Packer in the way that they have grown to use it, and go above and beyond in helping them, and making sure that they have the tools that they need to extend it. So all that to say, up this timeline, looking at this timeline from 1.0 up until 1.6.6, really sort of prepared us for 1.7.0 and the future of Packer, which is Packer init and the repository. So the Packer plugin repository and Packer init. Just again, the 1.7.0 release which was released yesterday, was really the stepping stone of what's to come, and my big reason for being here today. I'm really excited. The team, everyone here at HashiCorp is very excited about this last release, and I'm really happy to be sharing this story. Today, what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you the Packer plugin repository, generating just a glimpse overall, like again, the 3 key reasons on why we decided to go this route. Share with you a little bit about the changes in 1.7.0 from a practitioner standpoint. Talk about the development process for extending Packer, and give a brief view of what's to come. So when it comes to the Packer plugin repository and Packer init, there are 3 key goals: maintainability, putting the plugins in the hands of those that know it best, right? Again, we really want to empower our maintainers and our contributors. Discoverability, right? We want to reduce the time to build, and by making plugins available to everyone and easy to find. Right now, we have the plugins that are bundled with Packer, and we have the plugins that are made available on GitHub by our contributors. And we try our best to feature them on the Packer.io site, but sometimes a lot of good plugins get missed. So we're looking to solve that with the plugin the plugin repository. And then lastly, configurability, right? And I think this really hones in on version 1.7.0. We really want to start thinking about where that framework that we're building, that we're providing to our users and practitioners to build on Packer, right? This is a model that has been proven, that has been taken, that has been used for Terraform and many of our other tools, and we want to follow suit and help our practitioners continue to use Packer and build it and configure it for their needs. So now, I really, before going into the Packer plugin process for maintainers, taking a quick step back, I think, there's a lot of tooling that we want to build around this repository. Right now, it's built off GitHub, and we've been working, behind the scenes to build tooling and processes around what we expect for Packer for this repository, so that it can be effortless for users to switch over to. So, and I think, that story really starts with our maintainers, right? So from a maintainer's perspective, there's 3 key things that I'd like to call out here. There's the Packer plugin SDK, there's the multi-component plugins, and then the plugin scaffolding. The SDK, which was also released alongside Packer 1.7.0, and it's currently sitting at version 0.1, is all of the related packages for building plugins and libraries that were in Packer core, and they've been extracted out now into their own SDK. The SDK itself provides a clear versioning, semantic versioning guidelines, and and clear indication to users on when things are going to change or will be considered the breaking change to existing plugins. Which is probably a good time to call out that the latest version of Packer v7.1 with the new SDK is a breaking change for existing plugins. Right now, there is a change in the API protocol. Before 1.7.0, Packer was using version 4. Packer is now using 5.0. The good news is that We have, alongside this SDK, we have a new excuse me, a new tool called the Packer SDK Migrator tool that allows that allows maintainers to seamlessly upgrade their plugin to the latest release. On top of that, we also provided a few guides on the Packer.io site with detailed instructions on how to take your existing plugin from the API 4 up until the latest SDK, and essentially also to creating what we call a multi-component plugin. If you're interested, definitely please check out the migration guide, and we'll have a blog post forthcoming around the plugin SDK. So I've been throwing around this term multi-component plugins, and it's something that is not quite new. It's new in the sense of, for us, for Packer, at least our usage of it, but it's not new. It's been used it's been out for a while. If you think about Terraform and some of our other products, it's essentially similar to what providers and their resources are. But a multi-component plugin for us is one plugin that provides multiple functionalities. So what we're looking at here on the screen is the new Docker multi-component plugin. And this plugin, if we take a look, provides a default builder, which is called Docker. It provides a post processor, the import post processor, the push post processor, the save, and the tag. And these are equivalent to what we currently have now. The only difference is that instead of having them maintain across multiple plugins, we have them maintained in one plugin and one single code base using the same API in the same repository. So they're easy to manage and easy to install, because now we could easily use Packer init to install one plugin as opposed to many plugins. The last part for the maintainers is the scaffolding, right? We really appreciate all the work that has been done so far on the contributing to Packer. I mean, Packer is what it is because of the contributions by the community, and we're so grateful for that. And we know that we're breaking things, but we also want to make sure that you understand that we got you, right? We're here to support you, because anything that we break for you essentially breaks for us. So we want to think about, as a whole, how do we continue to push forward? So aside from creating the SDK and creating the migrator tool, we created the scaffolding project. And the scaffolding project, or I say project, but it's really a repo, a template repository that you can use to get started in looking at building a new plugin, right? We have all the tooling in there from creating a builder, a post processor, for creating builders, post processors, data sources, all the way to releasing, right? We have GitHub Actions. This repository has all the information that you need to get started, and it points back to all the guides that we have written. And just like just like on the Packer repository, anything that you see here today, any of the new repositories that I'm introducing, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in there. Open up an issue. We're always interested in helping folks push Packer forward. So that was that was the plugin repository from the maintainer's perspective. And now I want to take an opportunity to sort of go into the Packers, the practitioner's perspective, and sort of paint kind of bring it all together. So we went through the process of building a new plugin, and that new plugin being this Docker multi-component plugin. And we go into the practitioners, and I'm using the term practitioner very loosely because I just want to point out maybe just the users who use Packer on a daily basis, but may not be creating custom plugins. For the practitioner, we created this new command, which some folks may be familiar with from the Terraform side, and maybe from the Waypoint side and the Vagrant side. We have this Packer init command, and it's really here to help users get their plugins. And what this looks like is we have this new Packer block. Well, the Packer block was actually introduced in version 1.6.6, but what's new is this required plugins block. This required plugins block defines the various plugins that a particular template or build it needs to complete its job, right? And here we're looking at the Docker plugin, which is considered required, which is a required plugin for this particular build. And here we can see, for those familiar with the ACL, you'll see that there's a source definition for the Docker using the latest Alpine image. For those not familiar with ACL, but maybe more with JSON, a source is essentially your builder type. And here we're using we're creating a Docker builder type, and up above, we're using this required plugins block. Now it's important to call out that required plugins is only available to ACL. Right? These are one of those features that it was very difficult for us to try to support both in JSON and ACL. So this is one of the decisions that we made back in that reflection point, where we wanted to start building the future of Packer and going all in on ACL. So this feature here is ACL 2 only. And if you are interested in using it but still using JSON, we have an ACL 2 upgrade command built into Packer that would help you migrate those JSON configuration files into the new ACL format. The key thing here on the required plugins block is, aside from defining what the plugin is called, in this case Docker, is the version and the source. Right, so version for plugins moving forward, we're going to be enforcing a semantic versioning for our plugins, right? Because we want to make sure that people know what versions of the plugins they're using, and also when they start to share and work with other teammates, that it's clear to them what that they're using a consistent version. And then the second part is source. Source, is essentially a GitHub address. As I said, this is it's being backed by GitHub. So source represents a GitHub address that points to the location of the multi-component plugin, with the small caveat that the actual name of the repository is packer-plugin-docker, and which is not something you see here. You only see the Docker name. Packer is smart enough to see that and understand that this is how to resolve this name. And these are one of those sort of conventions that you'll see documented inside of the scaffolding project. Once you have the required plugins block defined, we can start to look at using Packer init. And it's in its simplest form. Packer init looks like this: Packer init followed by the name of the source template. It's a single command that you run before build. And if you happen to be using the required plugins block and you try to run build before hitting Packer init, it's going to check if any of your plugins are missing. And if it is, it's going to prompt you to run Packer init. And what Packer init is going to do is going to parse each of these plugins defined and check for locally installed versions that match those the version constraints. If it's not defined, it's going to reach out to GitHub and download those plugins for you automatically. And like I said, one of the things that we're looking to solve here is this discoverability problem, right? Right now, in order to get third-party plugins, you have to go and download them and install them manually, which still works and it will continue to work. But the path forward is really to enable plugin developers to start creating Packer init enabled plugins so that users can begin downloading them using the Packer init command. And over time, we'll start to set up processes where documentation and the list of available plugins around the world will be hosted on packer.io, at least a reference to them, so that people can search there for tools of interest. So I can kind of go into more details on how this works, but I figured it'll be probably a good time to drop into a demo. So I'm going to share another screen here, I think. Sorry.
I think you may have done the wrong sharing.
Oh.
Oh wait.
No.
Oh no, I see a mouse is really tiny.
Oh, do you see a terminal?
I do not see a terminal.
Okay, so
Yeah, it could be that you're not sharing a desktop, but
okay.
just a screen. Oh, there we go. That's it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you can like increase the size a bit, that would be great.
I think that's as big as it's gonna get. Let's see.
Does like Control Plus or something or Apple Plus not help?
No, it's not gonna work. It's too small, huh?
No, I think we'll be somewhat okay.
Okay. All right. I'll continue, and I apologize. And let's see.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stream now. I think it should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you, Dominique. So I'm going to demo 3 things today. I'm going to demo the packer init command, the simple usage. I'm going to demo the aliasing, using aliases with packer init, and I'm also going to demo the upgrade command. So starting with the simple packer init command, and taking a quick look at this ACL file, we'll see that we have the required plugins. And we have the required plugins going out to GitHub for Docker. We have a source, and we have a simple build with a manifest post-processor. So if I try to do a quick packer build, I should get an error indicating that there is no plugin installed for. So now I'm running a packer init. And there we go. We can see in blue lettering that this package has been installed. And now if I do a packer build, it should work as expected. And we're done. Great. The packer init, like I said, will download the plugins that have been installed, that haven't been installed. And if you try running packer init again, we should essentially get a no op because the plugins have already been installed. I could go into verbose logging to sort of indicate, to show how the plugin selection works, but I feel I might run out of time. So I'm going to go into the aliasing demo, and here we have the ability to rename a plugin. I think this is perfect for those situations where you want to test 2 versions of two versions of the same plugin. So let's say you're working on your own custom fork of Docker, you can come in here and add it as a required plugin, and you can give it a different name. So here we're referencing it as alias Docker, and here you can see that I have a build as alias Docker using a different image. So I'm going to go ahead and trigger a build for this. Right? And it worked because I'm using the same version of Docker that's already installed. So the only difference is that I'm referring to it differently, and Packer is able to determine that the source for that plugin and the version match. So it's able to trigger a new build without having to run another Packer init. Had this been a different plugin, then we would have gotten another message to run Packer init. Okay, great. All right, and we created an image tar out of that one, so things are working. And then lastly, I take a quick look at the upgrade. So the upgrade is a flag that we can pass to Packer init to upgrade our latest version to the latest version of a plugin. So Packer init. That's going to download version 219, I believe. Yep. And then if I change that and run a quick upgrade, it should go ahead and download the next version. And that's Packer init in a nutshell. We have this fully documented on our packer.io site, and we'll soon have a guide on using it and migrating. Well, actually, there's a usage guide already, but we'll have some more information on using it with the new multi-component plugins that are coming out. All right. Okay. So with that, I think it gives me just enough time to start wrapping up. So at this point, you want to talk about the vision. We've come a long way already with the 1.7.0 release, and we're really sort of setting the groundwork or the foundation for what's to come next. And we have, again, what comes next. The full Packer plugin split, right? This is in the next version of Packer, which we're the next minor version of Packer, version 1.8. We're going to start breaking up. We're going to break up all of the plugins that are currently bundled into Packer and break them out into their own repository. So, and where possible, we will start to consolidate them into multi-components. For example, the Amazon, using that as one example, has 4 builders and a post processor. That will soon become just one overall plugin, plugin with 5 components. And this is work that we're going to start working on now. And then by the time 1.8 rolls out, you'll start to see all of these repositories spring up, and users will be able to start using the Packer init command with all of the plugins that are currently bundled with Packer. And then continuing into that, I think kind of going back to that story of 1.6.0, the future is 2.0, right? And 2.0 is, a world where it's, all in on ACL, and continuing with this repository story and new features that these 2 tools alone help us bring together. Thank you. I'm Wilken Rivera, and if you're interested in learning more about Packer or interested in helping this initiative, please check out the GitHub repositories. We'll have some open issues on work, on ways to contribute. If you're a maintainer, please check out the guides. We'd love to get your feedback on how the migration is going for you and figuring out if there's anything we can do to help streamline the process. And if you're a user eager to get behind Packer init, please bang away at it and open up and reach out to us on the forums and on GitHub, because we'd love to hear your feedback. Once again, thanks again for joining in. I'm Wilken Rivera on Twitter, and my email is wilken@hashicorp.com. Feel free to reach me directly if you have any questions.